resume recording. Okay, all right, there we go. Now we are recording this also, so we'll be able to watch it, and I'll be sending out a link to the recording as well as any materials that I showed during this webinar. So welcome to the Mathshare for Students webinar. So my name is Matt Nupin. I'm the program manager for Mathshare. I taught science for 12 years. I worked primarily with at-risk teens, and then I also worked at a number of different charter schools. This was from my most recent charter school. Is a charter school aimed primarily at Somali East African immigrant families. And so this was kind of in my maker space because I always tried to come up with different ways which we could make science and learning interactive. And so even though I taught science was my label, I did a lot of math because we're trying to integrate all of that within STEM. And in my teaching, I worked with a lot of different needs that my students had. And so finding different ways in which we can work through the same thing and giving students the alternatives, that's really the key part to learning. And that's really fantastic part way that Mathshare then helps out students because it gives so many different ways in which you can accomplish the same task of solving your math problems. So I want to start off by just kind of like showing this, right? So this is what a lot of students are still receiving. So there's some digital versions of, worksheets and things like that, but a lot of math is still done through these worksheets. So chances are, if you're a student and you're watching this, this is the kind of work that you'll get very often. And if it's on paper, what can be difficult is then trying to cram all of your work into this very small area underneath what's been listed. Being able to, if you have difficulty with handwriting, trying to write that out in there, make it very, very clear and legible of like what you're actually doing, it becomes very difficult. And certainly if you have like a PDF version from Google Classroom, it makes it more difficult. So our goal with Mathshare is to make this problem solving process very simple. And I wanted to share then too of this quote from a teacher that we've been working with, who works with a 5th grade boy with cerebral palsy, where he had difficulty with holding a pencil. And so trying to write out the math equations, he often then needed somebody else to help him with going through that. He understood it, but the actually writing it down part was very difficult. And so with Mathshare, he was then able to work independently in the classroom with his peers, with the other students the same age as him, and be completely independent and successful in showing what it is that he knew. What we're going to be going over. I'm going to try and keep this very brief, but we're going to be talking about what is Mathshare and the benefits for the students, how to use the math tools within Mathshare, because that's a very critical piece, obviously, how to create your own problem sets as a student, because either a teacher can create the problem set and then assign it to students, or any student can also create their own problem set and then share that with their teacher. And then with creating your own problem sets, then I'm gonna briefly go over how to take a paper worksheet or a digital worksheet or other math problems that you might find online and turn those into a Mathshare problem set that you can then solve on your own. Once you've solved that, how are you going to share that work with others? That can be your teacher, parents, other students, and then also where you can find additional information beyond this webinar. All right, so we are going to start off by going to Mathshare. So Mathshare is mathshare.benetech.org. Now I'm already signed in. I'm actually going to sign out though for this real quick, and I'm going to go back to our Mathshare homepage. So when you get to Mathshare, what is Mathshare? It's a tool that lets you break down math problems into step by step and explain your work. So it helps you organize and show your thinking as you solve a problem. And this is all in a digital way. So you're using the keyboard. It has some, you can then speak and kind of like say why you did those individual steps. And so I'm going to go ahead and sign in to Mathshare. You can sign in with Google or Microsoft accounts. So most students, almost all schools have one of those two options. You can continue without signing in. Your work will be saved, but it's up to you to save a link to your problem in order to come back to it or share it with somebody else. If you don't save that link, then your work kind of disappears in the internet. But I'm going to sign in with Microsoft. By signing in, then all of your work is going to be displayed into your dashboard. So this is kind of your dashboard here. All of the problem sets that you've worked on will show up here. I'm going to create a, also here, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a kind of like an overview of what Mathshare is. So I'm going to select on the help menu in the upper right corner and then select tutorial. And you can do this step by step one, but I'm going to close that for now. And this shows you what a finished problem can look like in Mathshare, of where the prompt is up here at the top in orange. It is also placed as step one. So step one, 7x minus 13 is equal to 1, and the instructions of solve for x. And then with each step, there is the equation. So the steps are automatically numbered for you. The equation that you've done, we have this great crossout function. And then on the right side, then you end up adding in a description of why did you do that step. Now, this description area can be used with either you can fill that out first and thinking through how am I going to solve this? Like, what do I need to do now? And then do the math, or you can do the math and then explain why you did that. If you use the crossout feature within Mathshare, that following right after that step, Mathshare automatically creates this cleanup step, as it's called, of where anything that was crossed out is then removed, and then you have just that one part. And I can tell you that as a science teacher, where we've done a lot of crossing out and a lot of multiple step math equations and physics and chemistry, that's a really important learning piece of not erasing your work, but just simply crossing it out so that you can then later on see where did I actually go through and what happened to these different numbers and different things. It's really important to leave your work there and cross it out, not to erase it. And any student that hears this will probably be thinking of an annoying time when teachers like, don't erase that. But it really does help. And so then with this one, this last step of x is equal to 2 and the final one, and then you can select finish. On here, then I also want to point out this obvious big area. This is your math editor. So your equation box here, these are all of your math tools. And you notice as I'm moving my mouse over them, it also has the keyboard shortcut. So every math tool that's in here, and I'll go over them, allows you to also use the keyboard to access any of these things. So you can either select the button or you can use the keyboard. Over here is where you write your description or your explanation for why you did that step. You can type in there, or you can use the speech to text tool. So this is just kind of like your dictation one. So I could then select this and say, I then needed to divide both sides by 7. And it will automatically then put that text in there for you. There is also a Sketchpad in which you can then draw out different things on here. So if you need to visually think through how you want to do this, we added this based on the suggestion or request from a student saying that they just needed the ability to draw out certain parts of the equations to help them think through what are they going to do, where the number is going to be moving around. And so we've added that in there. And then you can select add step or undo. And then once whenever you add a step, then it automatically gets put in there. You can always go back and edit any step by selecting the edit button on the right-hand side of that step, and then it'll bring up the equation editor and move it up there for you. You can also then cancel if you didn't want to make that change. And when you're done, you select finish down at the bottom, and that will save your work and then bring you back to the dashboard. That was our example one. So how do you create your own problem set, right? So we've got this. So either your teacher will assign you a problem set, and it can be assigned through Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams or something like Schoology, or they can give you a link to it. But for this one, we're going to create your own problem set, right? Because now let's assume that you have this paper worksheet. So maybe it's a physical piece of paper that you have, or it's a PDF that your teacher has given you, but you want to be able to work through this digitally instead. So we have our problem right there of 21 plus x is equal to 26. Here's how you're going to go through that process. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to select create a problem set. This tools palette, I would say just go to the next one. What this allows you to do is customize which tools you don't want to show up. So if you didn't want geometry to show up there, you could then unselect that and then select next. But don't really worry about it too much unless if you purposely don't want some of these buttons to show up on there. It won't really change what you can or can't do. Now I'm going to, so this is our problem set. You can edit the name. So I can say solve for X worksheet. And I'm going to save this. And now I'm going to add a problem. So looking back at this, it's 21 plus X is equal to 26. Now you don't have to number them. Mathshare will do that for you automatically. So right here under the equation, I'm going to write 21 plus X is equal to 26. Is that? Yep, 21 plus x is equal to 26. And then over here for the prompt, I'm just going to write solve for x, just as a reminder for myself, and I'm going to add the problem. Now here's where you can just continue adding multiple problems. We try to make it so you can quickly do that. So if you had the worksheet next to you and you're typing these out, that'd be very simple. Or you could have one window here and another window to the side. But I'm just gonna put in this other one of 12 plus 2x is equal to 16. So 12 plus 2x is equal to 16. Now I'm just simply using the keyboard and adding in the plus and the equal. You could also press these buttons. So going back to here, I could then select equals and then type in 16. I'm going to write solve for x again. I'm going to add that problem, and I'm now going to say that I'm done. So you can see that Mathshare automatically numbered these for me of first one and second one. If you want to, you can rearrange them. So I could move this one so I can select and drag it over there. There's a couple of different ways in which we can do that. If you ever want to delete or change some of them, I can select the more options button in the lower right corner of the card. I can then select edit problem or remove it and then delete it from the set. But let's say now we have all our problems in here and I want to solve this first one. What we'll do is we'll just simply click on that problem and it opens it up in the math editor for us here. So I'm thinking through this, right? Like, what do I need to do? I'm going to do my description of how I'm going to solve this problem. So I'm going to say, I need to get all the numbers on the right-hand side, so x is just on the left side. So I'm going to subtract 21 from both sides first. It's got that in there. Now there's a couple of different ways I'm going to do this. So, right, so I need to subtract 21 from both sides. So one thing I could do is I could say minus 21, and now I've got that right there. And so, right, like I could say minus 21. Now this is where I like to use the crossout tools. So over here, and these can be a little bit confusing at first, but so what crossout does is if I first highlight the math, and then I select crossout. So now it's just simply crossed it out, and that's just simply going to be 0. So I'm just going to leave it like that. But now for this one, another thing that, right, because on paper, you would typically end up writing minus 21 underneath it. So you can also do the same thing with Mathshare. So by selecting the number first, I can then select the stack below. And what that will let you do is now put another number below it. So I can say minus 21. And so now I've got 26 minus 21. And another really neat thing about Mathshare is, so now I could either use cross out and replace. So 26 minus 21 is going to be 5. So I could say cross out and replace as 5. Or I'm pressing Command Z on my computer right now to undo that. Or you can select this calculate button. So if I highlight these again and I select calculate, what that does is it automatically then crosses that out and then gives you the answer. Now this is only going to work for actions or functions that are just involving numbers. So if it had X or any variables within that number, then it can't calculate that for you. But since we have just 26 minus 21, Mathshare will do that. And now I'm going to select add step. Why is that adding my step right now? I don't know why it's not adding my step. All right, well, we're going to come back to this here. But what I'm going to do is, right, so we're going to save our work. I'm going to select finish. There we go. So I'm not quite sure why it didn't go through and do that whole thing. Here, let's try that. And we're going to update our step. All right, well, we will come back to that. All right, so I'm going to discard my changes for there. So now that we've gone through and we've done that, for this other problem, I wanted to kind of just highlight a couple of different things. For some of these different fraction tools, wherever it has that little black box, that or the different squares, that black square is what your current number is. So if I highlighted this one and then I select fraction, then the open or the unfilled in square is where you're going to then be able to add things. So let's say if I need to do superscript, I could also do that. So I'm going to highlight 16 and then select the superscript one. And now I can add that number in there. Another option would be you can also use the keyboard. So when I move my mouse over that, if I press shift and the little upper arrow thing, that's one that's above 6. So I press shift and that, now I can put in the square. A couple of different ways in which you can do that, right? So we've kind of talked about if you had like a paper worksheet, but what if we had other things as well? So I'm going to go back to all of our problems and I'm going to add a new problem here. A couple of different things. So this is I'm going to go through a couple of different ways in which you could, collect your math problems from different places. This one is called from Open Up Resources from their math curriculum. Now, even though they have the math equations here, I'm not able to highlight it. So because I can't right click and say and copy this, and I also can't select it, then this is something that you would have to type into Mathshare. Other ones like this Khan Academy here, I can select it, so I can then do Command C to copy, and now I can paste that into Mathshare, say solve, and add that problem. Google spreadsheets or Google Docs. So Google Docs and Microsoft Word, you can create more complex equations. Now with Microsoft, you can copy complex math equations and paste them directly into Mathshare. With Google Docs, you're not able to do that exactly. So this one I created with the equation editor. So if I copy that and I go back over to Mathshare and I try and paste it, you'll notice that 2 lost its superscript. So it's no longer x squared, it's just simply x2. So that's where you would then have to go back in, and then we could say like, okay, and then square that and edit it. But also, if it's written out in this way where it has that little like caret, that little symbol that's above the 6 on the keyboard, if I copy this and paste it into Mathshare, Mathshare knows what you meant by that symbol, and so it automatically then squares that for you. So that's for pulling it from there, and yeah, those are the ones I want to show you. And so if you ever end up getting math that kind of has this notation of where it has these other symbols that are in there to indicate what that means, if you copy that and paste it directly into Mathshare, Mathshare will understand what you mean and automatically kind of do the different things like square or fractions or things like that. All right, so we've talked about creating your own problem sets, converting them. Now that you have your problem set, how do you turn it in, or like how do you share it with other people, right? So we have all of our work here. So we have 3 different ways in which you can share it. Easiest is if you're using Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams, you can then select Google Classroom and select your class and turn it in through there. Now, I want to say as a student though, you can only turn in assignments through Google Classroom if your teacher had assigned things to you from Google Classroom. You can't just automatically share things directly there. So if your teacher assigned you this problem set through Google Classroom, then you can turn it in through there. Same thing with Teams. But let's say if they didn't, or you just simply want to email it to somebody, or you want to post it in the comments section, what you can do is you can select share permalink. And so I'm going to now copy that URL. And when you end up sharing that, I'll open this up in a new window here. This is what then it'll look like then for the people that you shared it with, of where they can then open it up and they kind of see your step-by-step, how did you solve that problem as we're going along. All right. So you're sharing your work. So it's really great is that then you can share that with classmates, with parents, with teachers, and kind of get some feedback and some help on that. When you do share it this way though, they will be able to see the work and make changes there. So this is a really good way of getting feedback. And we have some other changes that'll be coming up later where you can share just your answers so that they can't be edited. All right, so where can you find some more information? We're kind of getting to the end here of all of it. On our YouTube channel, we have a lot of different videos that go through more specific features for Mathshare. So definitely check that out. We talk about kind of like the stack below tool and cross out, things like that. Mathshare is at mathshare.benetech.org. It's free for teachers and students. And you can sign in, but you don't have to, but we do strongly recommend that you sign in. And if you're a student, make sure you select student when you first sign up. For any educators or parents that are watching, we are always looking for people to help us test and give feedback as we continuously develop Mathshare. So please go ahead and sign up on the Google form link that we have right there. You can also contact us on social media or via email if you have any questions. I have one last thing that I forgot that I wanted to show off, and that is our Help Center. So at any point, any place within the page, if you select the Help menu, you can then go to the Help Center. This has a lot of great stuff within here. And one of the things I want to show you here was like keyboards, right? So we talked about the keyboard combinations. So if I just simply type in keyboard, it's then going to show me all different things. And we have this article right here that I just updated. So this is keyboard combinations. So it has all of the different keyboard combinations that we have there. We also have it as a printable Google Doc. So if you want to have like a little cheat sheet next to you where it's kind of broken down into the different groupings, and then what is that function or symbol, and then what keyboard combination would do that. So that way then you can print this out or just simply access it digitally as well. We have different things like how to have it then speak the math equations or speak the, speak the math equation for you, and how to do that on Mac or say like Windows or Linux or Chromebooks. Okay, all right, let's go through some questions here. I see we have one right here. All right, so it's from Thomas. So his question is, if students are working on a touchscreen Chromebook, can they draw with the stylus or finger versus using the touchpad with the drawing tool? Yes and no. I want to say for this, Thomas, it does, the Sketchpad has sometimes worked on some touchscreens, but not all of them. We have a pretty significant update coming to the Sketchpad this summer. We're doing a big overhaul of the entire editor interface. So everything that you see right here, this whole editor is getting a major overhaul, and one of the big changes will be the Sketchpad, where the Sketchpad will actually include the math area. So all of this will become the Sketchpad, so students have a larger area to draw, and they can also draw on top of the math equation too, so as they're thinking through it. That will be compatible with touchscreens and mobile devices. So that was one of the big changes, is that in addition to making these changes, it's going to be so that it works great on mobile devices, and then, as a result, touchscreens are a key part of that. All right, so now Tracy's question of, do you need to assign the worksheet from Mathshare for students to share in Google Classroom? Or can you assign a worksheet that was made by another software, have students solve it and upload it into Classroom? Really good question, Tracy. It doesn't have to be a Mathshare assignment. If you just have it as an assignment in Classroom, period, then students can turn in their Mathshare link via Google Classroom. That's a really cool question. So that was kind of going through that issue of when I talked about for sharing it. So if you just made an assignment, period, within Google Classroom, students then can turn in their Mathshare link going back to it. So it doesn't matter if it was an original Mathshare one. And really what they're going to be doing is when they turn it in, it's going to be a link to their problem set. And so they'd select that and it would open up Mathshare in a new window for you, and then you could solve it there. All right, and so we got another question here. Where can I find the keyboard command chart I just showed? So that would be, easiest way to find it is go to our Help Center. So you select on the Help menu, go to Help Center, and then just type in keyboard. Now I have it under General is where that's listed. But if you just type in keyboard, you'll find it there as well. Now, if you're a teacher, if you're signed in as a teacher, you will have this little help menu down here. We don't have that active for students. One, because of data privacy issues. We also have some students that have signed up as teachers and then they ask us for homework help. But if you select that, so if you're a teacher and you're signed in and you select that, then you can ask, then you can search here for that as well. So you can just simply type in keyboard and then it'll show you results from the Help Center, and then you can open up here, and the link to that Google Doc is right here at the beginning. All right, so Mylene just asked, can I walk you through assigning and turning in sample assignments in Classroom? Yes. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close this. And we'll go back and we'll open up this one. All right, so we have a release that's going to be coming out in towards the end of May that will be making some changes to this sharing and assigning process. But everything that I'm going to be going over is still going to work pretty much the same. So as a teacher, let's say you've created this problem set. Now I'm going to assign it. So I'm going to select Google Classroom. Now this whole modal, or this whole window that just opened up, this is coming from Google Classroom itself. So we wanted to make sure for the whole data privacy side, we want to make sure that we're accessing as little information as possible. So Mathshare is not getting access to your Google Classroom when we don't request permission for it. This is all happening directly through Google Classroom. We don't really do anything. We just tell them what the link is and that's it. So now you'd select your class. So this is the class that I'm teaching. So I'll select that one. Now for choosing an action. So now I'm going to create an assignment for this. And so I've selected my class, creating an assignment, and I'll select go. And now we're gonna have those additional options. Solve this in Mathshare. You can see it's automatically put the link for me down there. You can then select if you wanted for individual students. I don't have any students in my class right now. We can change the number of points, select a due date if we want to, and now we'll go ahead and assign this. All right, so then I can also open this up and see what this looks like. And you can see this one right here. So this is our assignment up at the top. I'm going to open this up. And if I go over to the instructions tab, you can see this is what the students will see. And I can actually go through this real quick here. So if I open this up as a student, let's say I'm just going to solve this one real quick here. And I'm just going to say x is equal to 10. I'm going to add that step and now say finished. Now I'm going to turn this in. So this is what a student would be seeing. If you assigned it to a student, this is what they'd be seeing. And now I'm going to, as a student, I'm going to see if I can turn this in. No, I won't be able to turn it in. Let's see here. It's an upcoming assignment. Shoot. All right. Well, so I guess I can't really do that. But then, yeah, what a student would do is that then this is where they would, so a student would select their class, then select the assignment that they're turning it in for, and then they would turn it in through there. But what you would end up seeing then, what the students would turn in would be, so I'm just copy the link instead. When you look at their work, this is what you would see. And so if we open up that problem that we just finished, then we can see then the step-by-step here. And so this is kind of like the end if you're just sharing answers portion, where that math editor is gone. You can't edit any of the steps or do anything like that. Students could still go back and make changes to their problem set. So you can be giving them feedback on this and they can go back and make changes to their problem sets. It's not possible to lock down editing of the problem sets after they've been created or after, you know, as students are working through them. But so you can give them feedback in, you know, in some other form, and then they can go back and make changes and then resubmit it as well. Oh, is it? Oh, shoot. Sorry, Rebecca. I just saw that now. Yeah. All right, here I'm going to reshare my entire screen. Apologies. Thank you for pointing that out, though, Rebecca. All right. Just real briefly then, because you weren't able to see it, because it opened up in a new window. So if I select Google Classroom, then what you do is you select your class, so as teacher, and then I'm going to select create an assignment. And so the reason why it didn't show up is because it's actually in a new window. It's not within that Mathshare one. I was just sharing my window. So now I'm going to create that. And you can then enter in your title, your instructions, our link is right there. And then make any of the changes that you need to do. And then we can assign this out. And then it would go into your Google Classroom. So if I view it, this I'm guessing you're probably able to see because this is within that same window. Okay, so I think that's all the questions we have right now. If you do have any additional questions in the future, please go ahead and email us or just simply use that built-in help tool within Mathshare. That was that little intercom messenger thing right here. We get a couple of questions every day, and that's fantastic. It's probably one of the easiest ways to communicate with us. Go ahead and sign in to Mathshare. And then it automatically then has your name. And so then we're able to kind of email back and forth with you. If you're interested in being a tester, giving us feedback on different things, especially as we're releasing new kind of more advanced like accessibility features as well as more math functionality like that Sketchpad, the new version of the Sketchpad, we're going to be adding in calculus and statistics functions for math within Mathshare as well. So as you're going along, when you sign up through that form, it kind of gives you the ability to kind of say what you're interested in helping with so that we know who to reach out to as we're going along. And there we go. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I will email a link to, I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording here.